going to do this like an arena football game or anything like that. So I'm just going to have everybody come on up. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. I think the caffeine is starting to kick in. I feel a little bit of electricity in the room now. And let's get going. I got it all mic'd up. Are we going to do hand mics? Very good. Okay, cool. Okay, good morning, everybody. Yeah, okay. How about we do a word association game? No. My name is Tim Hanlon. I run a unit called, or a firm called the Vertere Group, focused on investment advisory and strategic consulting for many different aspects of the ever-changing digital world. So that's startups with just ideas and angel money to big private equity firms who are trying to figure out where media and its ilk might be going, and various people in between. I have a very strong panel here of folks who hopefully will kind of demystify and kind of just call what's what in kind of a state of the state of where digital agencies, and frankly just the whole digital marketing construct is right now in our world. What's kind of real, what's kind of not real, and hopefully we'll have a few minutes at the end for some questions who you can call BS on any of our commentary. So I'm just going to go right down the row. Why don't you just introduce yourself and explain where you are and a little bit of your background as well, where you were before, because I think that'll be helpful as well as your current roles. Do you want to start? Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Harrington. I'm a global business director at Tribal DDB in San Francisco. My background is primarily in account management and strategy at agencies. Most recently, I was at McCann World Group, working across all of their business units, McCann Erickson, Momentum, and MRM. And I've worked on brands ranging from Levi's to Vail Resorts to HP, Microsoft, and Intel.
Hi, I'm Christine Chen at Goodby Silverstein & Partners. So on the creative agency side, not a digital agency by any means, although it's interesting today that about 80% of our output is on the digital side. So we call ourselves an agency that is mostly digital, just happens to make some TV ads as well. I actually started on the consulting side and moved over to media a few years later. I started at Foot Cone & Belding before it became Draft, and I've been at Goodby for about 8 years now.
I'm Ali Afterhar. I have probably the most difficult to pronounce last name that you will encounter today. I'm the general manager of Organic San Francisco, where I've been for 2 years. Before I joined Organic, I was at Ogilvy for about 4 years. I was managing director of the San Francisco office there. And before that, I did a very long world tour at Digitas, so it's nice to see David Kenny here this morning. And I was at Digitas on the marketing strategy side in Boston, back when it was Bronner Sosberg Humphrey, and then San Francisco, and then London, and then San Francisco, and kind of the global tour.
I'm Adam Kleinberg. I'm the CEO of Traction. I also do a lot of writing for Mashable. I've been at Traction for 10 years. Before that, I started off at Think New Ideas in the 90s, which is kind of an integrated agency ahead of its time, doing everything from e-commerce implementations to integrated ad campaigns. I was recruited in 2000 to start the San Francisco office of Tribal DDB, and when the economy collapsed in 2001, I started my own agency, and there I am.
And there he is. All right, so let's start with a 50-point toss-up question. There was a very interesting article, I think it was either today or yesterday, in Ad Week by Mike Shields, basically a sort of an expose on some digital ads that were running in questionable online content, right? So this is the brand safety issue. And he regaled in a story of major brand ads showing up in highly questionable environments, and I'm not going to repeat them here, but you can quickly, diligently look on your iPads now as to what that article's about. And it kind of made me think this morning, is after the last 10 or 15 years of creating quote-unquote digital expertise within the agency environment and trying to serve marketers appropriately, are we no better than that? Are we still in a realm where we're actually creating ad messaging in a digital form that we still can't even tell where it's going to be placed? Or is that more of an outlier, and are we really just at the cusp of some really, really intriguing and interesting things going forward?
we're primarily a creative agency. We're not a media placement agency. But I think, when you look at that, agencies are kind of at the mercy of the technology at their disposal to place ads. And there's this inherent conflict between marketers' ability to scale and the ability to place their ads where they want it to be. And I think that is an inevitable byproduct of that dynamic.
Yeah, I think there's an unpredictability built into what we do because things are happening in real time and you can't control everything. I think a lot of it comes down to the agency and the clients to figure out how do you respond to that. I think that's where it has a lot of meaning for consumers, knowing that yes, you can end up in a bad environment, but what do you do as an outcome of that? I think we really believe that media shouldn't just be an outlet, it should be an expression of your brand, and part of that expression happens after that impression happens. It's what you build off of it afterwards.
I think we can do better than that. I hope that's an outlier. I think we can and should be creating experiences that are carefully curated and crafted to fit the footprint of the audience. I can't speak for that. I don't know if maybe that's where the audience is for that particular brand. But I know, most of what we do is not kind of the old days of figuring out where to kind of stick your brand up there and hope the right people notice it, but actually try to figure out what the what the audience is looking for, and then create experiences that are right and shaped for them. So I think we can do better.
But if I'm a marketer, right, I can't take that uncertainty or that's just kind of the way it is without really seriously rethinking perhaps the whole process, right? So I guess what this also gets down to is the separation of activities, right? So what was effectively talked about as a media placement issue actually has a supreme importance in the creativity and how consumers sort of react and feel about the brand. So I guess that's a wrapped up question, is saying, have we unbundled too much? Are we doing too many different sort of siloed activities that aren't more integrated to tell those stories and those engaging brand conversations and relationships with consumers? Or is that just the nature of the beast where we have to have all these specialties?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm sorry, I'll jump in on that. I mean, we have a lot of clients that come to us and are looking for sort of siloed solutions. So what's the silver bullet going to be for social media, or even more narrow than that? So, I had a conversation with a brand manager up at Nike a couple weeks ago wondering, what should I be doing on Instagram? I know there's something there. Or clients looking for what's a silver bullet in mobile, and how do I think about mobile strategy? And where we've found a lot of success at our agency is thinking more holistically about the entire ecosystem. So rather than thinking about how you can sort of have a play in sort of one track or one area, it's really about thinking about how those pieces all fit together to be the most effective puzzle for your brand. So. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think we started our agency from day one with the perspective that everything should be integrated. We were 10 years ago, we were a creative team that kind of had experience in advertising, we had experience in web development and online at work. So we built from the ground up a team that looked at integration as kind of a no-brainer. And 10 years ago, digital was kind of like put off in a corner, and today social media is put off in a corner.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
No. But, I had a conversation with someone from Kraft recently who's their kind of head of agency search. And she was telling me that the way that they're approaching looking at agencies is not looking for the best of breed siloed partners for point solutions. It's looking for who are the agencies that can tell stories across media and let them deal with bringing in best of breed partners for execution on specific things, rather than trying to do that themselves. And you've seen, Pepsi just consolidated its agencies. Kraft is restructuring. A lot of big companies are restructuring and rethinking their entire marketing organization because of that.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, this is an interesting topic, integration, and we all talk about it, and theoretically we all believe in it, but I think that a lot of it's going to stem from our clients willing to take those types of leaps, because we still get a lot of clients who come to us looking for a specific solution, and if our clients are siloed in that nature, it's hard to drive integration across, especially large organizations. So I think it's a collective responsibility of the agencies and clients together to figure that out.
All right, so is it the client silos, or is it the business model of agencies, especially over the last 10 years, especially amongst the big ones in consolidation, when those heretofore integrated activities, media, creative, digital, are now all separate P&Ls at the agency level, right? In essence, different disciplines fighting for a piece of the pie, and occasionally, maybe more than occasionally, in an unseemly fashion in front of the client.
Well, I think that's dumb, and that's why I started my own agency.
Yeah,
Well,
we don't
continue.
do that.
Tell why.
Well, I mean that is the case. I was at one of the big global agencies here, kind of doing a 6-month stint as an art director. When we were first starting Traction, or right before we did, and it was comical how the group on the 17th floor was fighting for budget with the group on the 24th floor, and there was no collaboration there at all. I think that's just silly. When you've got resources at your disposal, at the end of the day, a company should be looking at, how do we, agencies are businesses. How do we grow our business? You look at Apple, right, versus, if you've read the Steve Jobs biography, they compare Apple to Sony, right? As, why is one a great company and the other one is kind of a fractured mess? And it's kind of because Apple looks from the top down at, like, how do we create solutions that are going to delight people, that are going to bring together everything we have at our disposal and create a powerful solution, where you've got Sony that's kind of, okay, here's music, here's technology, here's electronics, and they haven't been able to innovate. They haven't been able to take advantage of the assets they have at their disposal. So as agencies, we still need to think about how do we create great companies. And if we abide by, okay, we're going to have this infrastructure that's divided, we're making our own bed.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I too have been in a large global agency where there was a committee to integrate digital into the agency, which is kind of telling. And I think as agencies, even as digital agencies, we went through a period of call it hyper-fragmentation, where there was a lot of specialty practices in a lot of very narrowly focused areas, and we've very much kind of gone away from that. And I actually get the question a lot, which is, well, do you have a social media department? And the answer, at least for organic, is no, we don't. We have a strategy practice that is deeply rooted at social at the core of everything that we do, because we can't think of it as sort of a tangent that sits off to the side. It is part and parcel of not only just digital, but it's part and parcel of advertising in general. So,
well, let's talk about social for a second, because it's been a huge wrench in the works, so to speak, over the last couple of years, in that it is not only an emergent form, excuse me, of media and communication, but so many other facets of not only marketing but other corporate functions. So I guess the question for the panel here is, how important is social in your current roles in helping clients with their marketing decision making? Because it's real and it's raw. And yet, how much of that is now is it still only within the realm of an agency, or do you see marketers or clients, frankly, pulling it back and being more in control of their own social destiny, given how wide of a swath of activity social, quote unquote, really is?
I think it's all over the board right now. I mean, I think every client that we deal with is dealing with social in a slightly different way. And I think right now as an agency, we tend to create very sort of customized solutions for them, because there isn't one magic solution that works for every single company. So I think that's how we're looking at it.
Yeah, I think social gets lumped into a silo where it doesn't belong, right? Like, social is a lot of different things within an organization. It's your marketing and channel strategies, it's your customer care strategy, it's your approach to outreach and building relationships with influencers in your space. It's kind of this notion of empowerment, like I was just, which is empowering your people, even your products. American Express, I was just at South by last week, and American Express launched a product where they are, it's called Sync. So you sync your Amex card with your Twitter handle, and then you can unlock deals by tweeting a hashtag, right? So they're integrating social media into their product development. And I think, you know, it's kind of like saying, well, who owns digital, right? Like, digital is everything. We all use email, right? We all communicate on some level using technology. And social is now permeating everything that we're doing. And I think, you know, a big part of social that needs to be done by companies is kind of opening their doors and being transparent and being human. People expect that of companies, and an agency, you know, may take the retainer to do your tweets for you, but that's not really getting you very far in life, you know, like.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done there, but there's certainly efforts that clients need to take and in-source in their social media realm. Customer care is a great one. That's probably not a place for agencies to really play. Really traditional PR efforts. I think a lot of that needs to be done in-house. But what agencies are really good at is using data. A lot of our clients have, are using Radian6 or Systemos and doing a lot of listening. But how you use that data and how to ideate on it and come up with creative solutions to solve those business problems, I think is where agencies can play.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as deploying programs, it is a bit all over the map. I mean, we have some clients who are fully outsourcing that to us in terms of, even including finding, sourcing, training, onboarding, and managing community managers, and some who are handling it themselves. But where we've seen actually just in particularly the last year, a ton of shift and opportunity is in the valuing of social media. And I don't just mean valuing in the sense of likes are good, tweets are great, yay, but actually being able to quantifiably tie a tweet to an actual ROI driving behavior. And it's a really interesting and really beautiful analytical landscape that we've got folks working on.
So this skates into a broader digital agency issue, and that is the dirty little secret of how actually more labor intensive and sometimes harder remuneration strategies for doing digital work, right? Which is ironic considering that a lot of digital technology is supposed to make the processes easier. Is that a short-term issue? Is it a long-term issue? And then how does an agency survive given the voracious appetite for talent, attracting it, retaining it, and compensating it, given the complexity and given the constant moving of the space?
Well, that's a number of questions, so pick a few of them in there. I think that notion of like how do you retain talent? How do you? It is a palpable issue, right? Like, I run a digital agency in San Francisco. I'm competing with Zynga and Google for talent, right? I've got.
And how do you compete then?
Well, we compete on our culture, and that's everything from having phenomenal benefits package to having a Burning Man policy in our employee handbook, right? That says everyone's guaranteed time off for Burning Man.
I'm so stealing that.
Yeah, well, anyhow, but that kind of thing kind of really, I think people at our agency feel like they're part of something, and that, we've had a terrific track record. In 10 years, I've had 10 people quit ever, so that's been really phenomenal for us, and we've been able to keep great people for a very long time. I think part of it is making sure that you're clear on who it is that you are as an agency and what kind of work you take on, what kind of brands you work with. If your focus is doing great creative, you should stick with doing great creative. And if your focus is doing just efficient marketing products, like say an Axiom, right? That's just kind of a data company that adds a layer of, we'll do your emails, as a service offering on top of that. That's a very different type of thing. So what my team is clamoring for is access and to more and more challenging projects and more challenging opportunities, because they're passionate about working on those things. So that's my beast that I have to feed.
But it's engineers are more expensive than liberal arts graduates, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so where is that balance then, both in terms of, let's say, the process of the agency as well as the cost-benefit analysis of such, right? How do you hire the right talent, compensate them, but then, effectively balance that with the need to tell stories and the sort of softer side of things, right? That's a real challenge and a real balance that seems to be playing out right now in agencies who don't really know which side they should be on.
Yeah, I just wrote a blog post on agile experience design, right?
Agile experience.
Agile experience design. So it's this kind of notion that's taken place in the development community of building software iteratively. And I think that's an important new dynamic. Just like over the past 30 years, this dynamic has kind of taken shape at agencies where great advertising has been built by putting an art director and a copywriter in a room, and then they come present to their creative director, and but you've got this team of two people that's kind of become a dynamic that challenging one another that works, right? It's worked to develop great creative. Today, there's this new dynamic that I'm seeing and that we're fostering about the developer and the designer, right? So how do we have that kind of team in a room being the team that's developing these digital experiences and still having input from strategy and copywriters and stuff like that, but that kind of designer-developer collaboration for us has been critical in evolving how we approach and become more efficient and more effective at creating great brand experiences.
I also think, though, that great storytelling and great technology or engineering are, in fact, not divorced of each other. They are like double helixes of the same strand of DNA. They are absolutely inexorably combined and should be. So to tell great stories, you need fantastically brilliant and creative, narratively told technology stories as well. And I think what we try to do to keep people motivated and talent coming in the door and staying at the desks is to always keep our eye on groundbreaking, because there is groundbreaking that happens every day in this business that we do, and sometimes it's small and sometimes it's big, but it's always amazing. And as long as you can remain sort of disciplined in your commitment to that for your people and the brands that you're servicing, then that keeps people happy to come.
Yeah, I also think that, I think a lot of times in the past we've relied on, a couple of key people in an agency to be the beacons for digital technology or whatever is the most innovative. And I think we've made a big shift to focus on everyone. So once you come in the door, how do we keep everybody as digitally literate as possible? And I think that is a really important part of culture that helps retain people, because they know once they come in, you're more important to us if you continue to learn and push everything. And if we treat everyone as a technologist and not just assume that a few core people are going to carry the whole burden.
All right, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions before we wrap up, so if anybody has some questions. But I'm going to ask quickly down the road here. So I've been focused a little bit more on the negative stuff. How about on the positive side? What areas do you sort of see right now as being nascent and exciting and interesting that you guys are either individually or collectively gravitating towards? Is there a particular area, arena, a cycle of activity that you're interested in and you think could be transformative for your clients, for your business?
I think that there is this kind of appreciation for creating brand experiences.
So you mean like brands and marketers being more storytellers without
being
programmer
storytellers, using the tools at our disposal to create experiences. I think that the whole app revolution has created a new level set for consumer expectations. And I think the whole web needs to be rebuilt, and we're at the forefront of helping create that experience. And I think that's a really powerful opportunity that I'm super excited about.
I would probably say two things. One is the sort of evolving definition of the nexus point of retail and digital. And we have a lot of clients, from Intel to Kimberly-Clark to Nike to Visa to Hasbro, who are trying to figure that out, which is, how do I create digital experiences, or digital brand experiences that are relevant when somebody is in the aisle? And there's a lot of conversation around that. It's really interesting. The second, I think, is I a bit of a point of integration, I think, between the product world and the marketing world, and I think those lines are blurring. So we work, Adam mentioned Amex, and some of the work that we're doing with Visa and their global marketing innovations team. They have a lot of products that are untethered and that are going to be much more mobile and much more digital. And so if you think about the marketing of those products, it's a really interesting shift between just kind of putting advertising out there and figuring out how to distribute the product and the experience in the right places.
I think right now, to Adam's point too, I think consumers have such a high expectation of what content means, and we don't matter to them. They don't really want what we do, to be honest. And I think that puts a huge burden on us as creative agencies and also for our clients to figure out what are the experiences that consumers do want. So I like this sort of shift to thinking about what are the behaviors that matter to consumers, what are the things that they want, as opposed to worrying about what's the hottest new platform that I need to be on. What is really the behavior that drives that? And I was excited last week when a CMO said, we're woefully behind, and instead of coming in and testing and learning and doing experimentation, I just want to do it. And I think that's the sort of sentiment that we're hearing a little bit more of now, which is fantastic.
Joe?
Christine, I agree. I don't know if this is exactly what you're saying, but I actually think over the past few years, we've gone back to the fundamentals in a lot of ways in marketing and communication. There's been this proliferation of different technology and different channels that everyone's been focusing on, but I think there's a movement now to come back to the core of storytelling and what the brand is and what we're trying to communicate and experiences with consumers. And to some extent, the technology is just a means to that end and is becoming less and less important. Yeah, and I think that's exciting.
I actually see that with startups and technology companies actually, and they're coming up with amazing technology and amazing insights and new paradigms, and they don't realize, not their fault, that they're touching 5 or 6 different marketing disciplines that are all generally siloed: media and television and in-store and promotion and mobile, and it's not their fault. They're just bringing these things together, and that I think is a healthy move forward for all of us. We have time maybe for 1 or 2 questions tops, and I see someone there, and here comes the microphone running in a quick manner.
So my name is Randy Kilgore. I'm with Tremor Video. And my question is, so here we are in March. We're about to enter the annual broadcast and cable upfront season. To me, nothing really exposes the difference between traditional, the divide between traditional and digital than that sort of process where, ultimately $85 billion gets settled and sent to traditional TV. So my question is, how do you view that event? Do you view it differently? Do you think it'll change your business in some way this year? Has it changed it in years past? Will it matter to you at all, or does it matter to you not?
This sounds a little bit like online and or other forms of video consumption and television, as well as just the broader bucket of digital getting bigger in the whole marketing.
There's been like this blend between what is a publisher, what is an agency, now, right? Like, you can bet that every major buy now is going to have some sort of digital component attached to it, right? And whereas previously, NBC couldn't, you had to talk to someone different to buy TV and to buy digital. Whereas now it's like, how do I integrate my, into the office and have my brand be a star on that, and then have a digital thing, and so it's really thinking holistically, and that's. I think overall a good thing, and it's going to drive more. I do think that's kind of something that we didn't touch on, is kind of this notion that there are parts of what we do that are commoditized. I mentioned an axiom before, right? And there are parts that are publishers are delivering creative and delivering creative programs to brands, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it just distributes. And those publishers aren't inherently strategic at their core. So I think agencies' value is going to continue to be in like how we think holistically about the strategic imperatives for our brands and how we bring that to bear, and work with publishers as partners and realize that not everything is going to be built here.
I think it's an elephant dance too, because you've got media companies that are kind of trying to feel their way through it too, right? Because they're not just television providers now, they're also tablet video providers. They're potentially over-the-top providers in some way, shape, or form. They're mobile deliverers of video. So in many respects, the traditional sellers are shedding their skin and becoming multi-faceted as well. So it's interesting to see both sides, the seller and the buyer, kind of evolve to a point where effectively everything can be an upfront conversation. I don't know if you see it that way.
Well, I'd certainly love to see some of just the language that we use about, it's traditional media. That means it's terrible. I think we use it in a very pejorative way, and I don't think it needs to be that way. And I also think the world is changing so much that when you look at a company like, a Comcast and what it's doing, or what Apple TV could potentially do to bring all these things together, it's really thinking about, what that format is and what it means to a consumer, as opposed to, oh, well, it's television, so it's dead. And I love seeing what AMC's been doing with Walking Dead, and taking, just a viewing experience and creating other experiences layered on top of it, where they have, experiences where you can sync your tablet with watching a show. So I think we have to kind of loosen up those boundaries and not see a television investment as a threat to us, but how do we work with that? How do we enhance it? How does it fit with everything else that we do?
Hi, Joe Mandisi, MediaPost. Adam, I loved your agile experience design quote, and I just blogged it, and you're welcome to reblog it on Mashable. But listening to you guys talk, by the way, I consider this the most exciting part of the business, this whole coupling of technologists and experienced designers and transforming everything. It's so exciting. I loved your point about that it's just an extension of storytelling. But the big takeaway I took from hearing you guys up here today is that the shift that's going on, in the old days with the static media, you guys were totally in control of that storytelling. And now we're not. In the opening question that Tim asked about, content showing up in inappropriate places, and Christine's point about, what you do with it. I guess the question I really have is, it's really about a shift in control, right? And how can you prepare for that? What can you do about that? That's the big paradigm shift here, I think. And, I know we've been talking about it, but just in a conclusive way, I'd just like to know, how do you really deal with that shift?
Are you saying internally within the agency sort of world, or consumers being more in control, or both?
No, these are agency professionals here representing brands with technologies and storytelling. And I guess what I'm really asking is, that's the big shift from my point of view, is that in the old days you controlled the story. Today the user controls the story.
Yeah, I think, like a tool we use is to think about how do we supply currencies, right, to consumers, right, that create value, that encourage them then to be part of that brand story. And yes, they're going. It's a beautiful thing when a consumer creates their own TV spot, their own spot, and throws it up on YouTube, supporting the brand. That's success, right? So that's not something, that lack of control isn't something we ever want to walk away from. I see that as a great opportunity, and I think that it's kind of almost like to think back in terms of this parallel of storytelling, like a choose your own adventure book, right? You need to kind of create almost a platform that for stories to be told, and you kind of we think of ourselves as initiating a story, right? And incentivizing participation and engagement in different ways and different levels. And there's different currencies that you can use to drive that participation, be that, social currency, recognizing people, I tell a story all the time, I started blogging in 1997, right? And for 5 years, I used to write this blog called Outrage about whatever pissed me off. And, I did this for 5 years, inside and out, because of the 24 emails I would get every week, kept me going, That's kind of a real palpable currency that can be leveraged by brands to take people and make them part of their brand story. People being empowered to help their communities, entertaining people. These are all things that, fuel engagement and fuel, deeper connections with brands. So I think it's a very powerful opportunity that, it's not control, but that's fine.
I think you have to have that thought of where a brand sits in culture from the very beginning of the creative development process. And I think we spent a lot of time on the strategy side trying to figure out what is our role in culture. Do we have one? Do we have the right to have any kind of role? And I think to that point of the cultural relevance, it has to be built into everything that we do. And then as we go through the process of creating work around that idea, and then even to the media side, I think we have to be honest with ourselves about, do consumers want this? Am I creating something that is going to create any sort of desire or people are going to invite into their homes? Because that's the ultimate test.
And rhetorically, I would say, can we do that without getting out of our own way, right? Can we sort of do that without sort of fighting each other discipline-wise to kind of make those things happen for the marketer as well as for the consumer? And I think it's an open question. I mean, I think it's the nature of the agency business, but arguably some of those things have to sort of, some of them radically change to get to that nirvana. So I think we are coming to the end of our time. So first of all, thank you all for showing up early this morning and for being caffeinated and being engaged. And I want to thank every one of my panelists for being volunteered, shall we say, for this panel today. And thank you very much for your insights.